We're ranking every limited 5-star DPS in Wuthering Wave 2.0 from worst to best in order. So someone is about to get really mad today because their favorite DPS just got put at the bottom of some kind of list. And that's actually going to be Changle, sorry. But I don't even know if you can actually consider her to be a main DPS. I personally feel like Caro game didn't really do Changle justice at all. She kind of like this mix of main DPS and sub DPS where she kind of doesn't do either of them really well. On one hand, she has this like support outro buff, so it feels like she's a sub DPS where you want to pair her with a fusion DPS that doesn't currently exist yet. The thing with Changle is that she has a lot of quick swap potential. She has a lot of skills that is easily quick swappable, but the problem is that if you're using her as a main DPS, every single time you swap out to do a quick swap, you actually lose your sub DPS outro buff. I feel like in order to make Changle work, they need to make another dedicated character that is really responsive to Changle quick swap potential. Maybe another character that can quick swap equivalently as much. Maybe one that specifically doesn't lose the outro buff when you swap out. Because at the current moment, Changle I feel like just is a big miss in Wuthering Wave because she is one of the best design, one of the best skill animation, but it just doesn't really work in the current like main DPS, sub DPS support system, making her in my opinion the worst limited 5-star DPS in the entire game, if you even consider her to be a DPS. Now I want to make it very clear that this video is focused on their meta potential or endgame potential, mainly focused on characters' usability in the endgame mode, the tower, or maybe like hologram and stuff like that. If you're just a casual player and using these characters very casually, like for the overworld or for like your daily domain dungeons and stuff like that, then it doesn't really apply in the same way. In fact, I actually think Changle is one of the best overworld characters right now, just because she can really rapidly spam skills, so it can easily clear mob after mob to farm echo and stuff like that. Because in comparison, other characters that require a long rotation or specific setup like Gini is not really that great in the overworld, so some of these characters have merit in ways that are not in the end games. By the way, if you enjoyed this kind of video, subscribe. I'm trying to make more Wuthering Wave video now because I actually really like the game, especially with 2.0 drop, so let me know what you want to see in the future. And coming up next is actually going to be Camila, which is actually a fan favorite, so it's kind of unfortunate. But one of the things I feel like with Camila is that she doesn't have enough support right now. One of the biggest problems with Camila is that she is a AoE character, but she lacks grouping as well as mobility. Because the way Camila works is that she is centered on herself in the AoE, so you need to actually be the center of all the enemy in order for your AoE to be the most effective. Because you can't sprint and you're hanging form, it is just really hard for you to move around right now, especially if you're facing more mobile enemy like the Inferno Rider. Now of course, the brand new 5-star character Rocket is supposed to address some of these issues with very insane grouping capability, on top of the fact that she can perform off-field grouping, meaning that it kind of solved this problem for Camila a lot. And of course, she does have that Havoc outro buff to continue to buff Camila damage. I still have some doubts regarding her single target potential after that. However, I think that's okay. That's not what she's really designed for. She's designed to shatter AoE monsters, and with the new grouper Rocky, she's going to be so good at doing that, and she's going to be destroying every event involving like AoE environment. Next up on the spot, we actually have Gian, the Forgotten King. I feel like a lot of people forgot how good Gian is just because he's the first limited 5-star DPS that came out in the original Wuthering Wave 1.0, so people assume he's not good anymore and he got power crap. But that's actually not true at all. Many DPS calculations actually show that Gian are able to do competitive or even equivalent DPS to pretty much every limited 5-star DPS out there, meaning that he pretty much do the same damage as everyone else. But the thing with Gian is that he doesn't need a dedicated 5-star support to do that. You see, Gian came in a time where dedicated 5-star support wasn't a thing, so Caro game actually made a compatible 4-cost character for him. And as a result, while you need to pull for 2 5-star characters for other team, like Changle Yao plus Yinlin, for Gian case, you actually only need to pull for 1 5-star characters because you can just use your Mortifi as your dedicated support, and he's still able to output competitive damage. Not on top of all the other advantage you have, like that he is really good at AoE, but he also have built-in grouping, so you don't need to bring another grouper just for him to do good AoE damage. He's very easy to play, and his parry almost come for free because he attacks so rapidly during his liberation. Gian actually got even better in the brand new 2.0 Wuthering Wave patch because of the introduction of Nightmare Echo. Now you can just equip the Nightmare Monkey and you don't need to do anything to get the damage bonus. It just come in by default, making your characters even stronger. But most importantly is that it doesn't transform your characters anymore. That means that you can just cast your Echo, making it significantly easier to use, but also just much smoother to use. Meaning that Gian is actually one of the best DPS in the entire game, but also being the easiest to use DPS in the entire game. Next character on this list might surprise a lot of people because people keep talking about how this character is really overpowered, but it's actually Gini. Gini is one of the most powerful DPS in the entire game, able to split out a bajillion damage on her resonance skills. However, that's not without condition. You have to build stacks, and most importantly is that it's very difficult to build stacks on your first rotation before you obtain the Gini outro buff. So your first rotation damage is actually significantly lower than you would expect, meaning that she might have some trouble clearing like the trash mob, the first wave mob and stuff like that, and she does need some time to ramp up. Fortunately, once you do ramp up your Gini and you get started pumping out your rotation, she's just so powerful. Similar to Caro, Gini's biggest advantage is that it is very easy to hit herself because all of your damage is bundled into your resonance skills, which come with a cutscene and it has a massive range. You basically can't really miss your damage, and you can just easily get your damage off 100% of the time, even if you're once again facing really mobile enemy like Infernal Rider. The ability to basically just fly or float in the air also allow you to mitigate like 90% of the enemy damage for free, because you can just grapple up and then stay in the air and the enemy can't really hit you most of the time. In a game where the enemy can actually kill you, I feel like having built-in survivability or ways to help you survive an enemy attack is actually really important. I think it's not talked about enough. The biggest problem with Gini right now is that she doesn't have a dedicated support. We currently don't have a dedicated Spectral Resonance skill support for Gini, and I think that's actually going to hurt her damage a lot compared to teams that have a dedicated support, once again like team like Caro or Changle. The biggest problem with Gini right now is that previously we either ran her with Yanwu, which honestly is not really that great. It kind of works if you don't have Tati, but if you do have Tati, Caro is actually going to take that away from you, and so we're just kind of in this pigeonhole of like, oh, we don't really have a character to play with her, and it's kind of weird. Coming up next, this might surprise a lot of people, but I actually went with the brand new 5-star characters, Carlotta. Carlotta is one of the first ranged DPS in the entire game, which is really good. That means that against really mobile enemy, once again like the Infernal Rider or Fallacy of No Return, you are able to comfortably DPS regardless of the enemy distance or enemy pattern. That means that her overall DPS uptime is actually really high, meaning that her gain damage in ways that are not expected compared to other characters. On top of all of those is that you can actually freeze the enemy in place, and when the enemy is frozen, they actually can't attack you, allowing you to get your DPS off even easier. She has really good gap closing on her skills, where it just basically covers infinite distance, as well as her forte circuit, so it means that you can basically always be hitting the enemy and you will never suffer from any DPS downtime. Of course, that doesn't mention the fact that she just does a bajillion damage on her ultimate Deliberation, where you basically fire like a missile out. My biggest complaint for this character is actually that they made her a burst-oriented character. I really wish they would have went with the style where this character focused on her normal attack instead, to give that like Devil May Cry like pistol feel. But instead, she's more of a character where you kind of like switch in, do like a quick combo, ult, and then like pew, and then you switch out. So I feel like that's just not as cool. Otherwise, I just feel like she's a little too vulnerable to damage during her ultimate. You kind of just sit there and fire this really long animation. You could dodge, but be sure to not cancel all of your animation, because you will lose the damage. I don't know, this is definitely one of my favorite characters. She does so much damage, and it's probably a character I would recommend everyone to pull for. Except like, look at all of these like really cool animation, but they made her like a burst character, so you just come in like, what? Come on, man. And now first, for final first place, we got Changle, and I think this is currently the most underrated characters in the entire game. Anytime someone comes to my stream and they ask me, who do you think is the best character in Wuthering right now, I actually respond with Changle. Changle is just one of the most rounded characters in the entire game. He has really good damage, really good AoE, really good survivability and stuff like that. Starting off with his burst, he has a really big upfront burst on his Liberation, and it's very useful to clear like your first wave in the tower, clear AoE content and stuff like that. Having really good upfront burst is always really good, because it allows you to push enemy faces quicker. Once you have entered your Liberation form, you get a few of these massive explosions that do a bunch of damage but also come with a bunch of utility. To start off, they have really good AoE, and they also kind of group the enemy a little bit. They kind of do like this mini like suction kind of thing, so just really good in AoE content, on top of the fact that they just do a bunch of AoE damage. But it also comes with two other really amazing utility that I feel like it's not talked about enough. The first one is of course the time freeze ability. Every time you cast your enhanced resonance skills, you'll notice that the screen actually freezes a little bit and the enemy actually pauses for a little bit. And I think this is really big for survivability, because you're able to completely freeze up the enemy attack multiple times in rapid succession during your liberation. But the other amazing utility that he has in his Resonance Liberation is that he actually has really good gap closing ability. Even if you're far away from the enemy, when you do your special attack, you can actually get all the way up close to the enemy, and the distance you can close up is actually really big, meaning that he's actually really good against enemies that are mobile or even flying in the air, just because he's able to close the gap easily and then freeze them in place with his Resonance Liberation. He also has one of the easiest Echo build path in the game. To start off, of course, you have the brand new Nightmare Echo that is significantly easier to use compared to the previous Echo, but otherwise you can use the 5-piece Thunder set, 5-piece Lingering Tune set along with Mech Abomination, or you can use a mix of 2-piece, which is actually currently what I'm using. I feel like Changle is really underrated just because they gave him away for free during the 1.3 patch, and people are thinking like, free character can't be that strong. But I actually think he is the strongest limited 5-star DPS in the entire game in terms of overall usability. He's just the most well-rounded. He has really good survivability, really good damage, really good burst, and really good AoE and stuff like that. And I feel like all of these things combined are not talked about enough. And so that's my DPS tier list for Wuthering Wave right now. How would you personally rank all the limited 5-star DPS in order in Wuthering Wave? Maybe you don't agree with the order I have, then comment below what order you have instead. And with that being said, as always, subscribe. See you guys next time.